Okay, thank you all for joining our webinar. Um, as we're going through the material, please make sure that you put any questions into the Q&A. Basically, we're going to cover some of the things that have come up over the last year, and then a few things that are going to be helpful, specifically relating to the ability to show live resource availability information with your students. So I wanted to give a little bit of my experience and some of the experiences we've heard from other universities and IT professionals. To start off with, I attended college in Idaho and quite literally walked through the snow uphill to find a computer lab, and frequently found that that computer lab was completely occupied. And at that point, I had a gamble that I needed to make as far as whether I decided to go to a different computer lab or I just got on the wait list and waited there. And so that's what the cartoon on the screen is kind of illustrating, is that students not knowing what is available in real time is going to potentially create wait lists or impact the student experience. It wasn't until my junior year where I found that on the third floor of the Student Union building in the back corner was a secret hidden gem of a computer lab that was never full. And I loved having that, and I kept that information entirely to myself, didn't even share it with my roommates because I knew that I always could find a computer. And so that was something that was great for me, but it was not ideal for the school because those were resources that were largely unutilized. Now we add in the additional issue that during the pandemic, your freshman last year may have only been on campus for a couple of weeks before the operations went to remote education. Because of that, when the doors reopen and students do return to campus, you're going to have 2 years worth of students that are largely unfamiliar with where things are. And so you're going to need to have a mechanism to help them know where the computers and where the software that they need is located. The other issue is the other half of your students are returning home because they consider your campus home. And when they come back, they're going to find that the furniture's moved and everything is not where they left it. And so for them to feel like they're returning home, it's going to be very important to let them know what the new outlay is, because you may have gone through a refresh over the summer and moved some computers around, and you may be following social distancing protocols, and that has impacted the layout of your labs. And so the other issue is when you are doors open and students are returning to campus, it's not going to be like the exodus from campus where everybody's going the same direction. You're likely to have students that are partially remote and partially on campus. And some classes are going to be on campus and others are going to still be remote. And there's going to be a balancing act of how do you provide these resources to students, whether it's in a remote environment or whether that is in an on-site environment. And when you make plans to return to campus, the ability to make a definitive plan has pretty much become a thing of the past. Is every plan needs a backup plan so that you can pivot on a moment's notice and return to remote learning models and things like that. So when, again, returning to my college experience, when I was in college and dinosaurs were on the earth, we had transitioned from live from maps to a service that of where you could actually put in your starting point and your destination and get a step-by-step directions as to how to arrive at your destination, which works great, other than the fact that it was unsafe to be reading your directions while driving. And if anything happened at any step along the way, you were still lost. And so moving from MapQuest to GPS allowed you to get information to arrive at your destination with a reference point of where you're at right now. And so adding in real-time information became key, and it really helped people reduce stress of finding where they needed to be and things like that. On the screen is an example of that. So if we had GPS that allowed students to find exactly what they needed on campus in real time, it's going to be very, very helpful. But imagine if your GPS only includes 20% of the locations, it's going to direct all traffic to those locations. And typically 20% of your labs do carry the bulk of the traffic. And if you have mapping and have discoverability available for those locations, it's going to be great for those locations, but it's also going to exacerbate the issue because students are not going to be able to see every location and find the one that's the most convenient for them. So if we publish all locations, students will be able to find the resource that's nearest them. They're going to find the ones that are most relevant for their coursework and things like that. And it will help surface those hidden gems so that all of your campus resources will be able to be found and utilized. And so that's kind of the idea that we have with being able to publish live computer information, resource utilization information. Now, essentially what we have is the ability to publish live maps showing what is available. And I've got a couple of customer examples that I wanted to show. So for instance, this is Mount Royal's actual web page showing what computers are available, and they've got a list of their different computer labs. And they have, what I really like about theirs is they have a schedule that allows you to find out what the hours of the lab are. And right now they're on break, so everything's closed, but then you can go from there to the map. And so Mount Royal is a great example of being able to publish the schedule. Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, they've added a lot of additional information. And what this map is pulling from is the live computer availability information from LabStats, merging it with a background image in order to show what's available. And so on any of these maps, if it is showing in blue, it means that that computer is currently in use. If it's in green, that computer is connected to the internet, it's powered on, it's ready to go. And if it's in gray, it is not connected to the internet currently. So Fashion Institute of Technology of New York has added a lot of additional information on their background image, such as where certain software packages are. So if a student needs a printer, or if they know that they need the Rhino 5 software, they are going to need to go to this section of the lab, and they can see how many computers are available in that section of the lab to verify that what they need is going to be there. And so I really like that. Southeast Missouri State University has a couple of examples where they have reconfigured their lab maps to show social distancing. So for instance, here we can see that every other computer is not available for on-site use. Those may be available for remote access, but they've been able to update that in order to show what computers are available now under their current configurations. And I'm going to get into a little bit of a tutorial on how to set these maps up, which will highlight how easy and quick it is for you to make adjustments based on changing traffic patterns, and if you are making more resources available on campus versus remote or things like that. So they're a great example of showing how you can publish resource availability even when they're social distanced. And then the last example that I wanted to show is Manhattan College. They're utilizing our API in order to create a slightly different view where it shows how many computers are available and in real time. And when you click the side arrow, it will show the map of those locations and which computers are available and which ones are in use. So those are some great customer examples of lab maps. And so what I wanted to do is get in and show how some of these can be created. From the LabStats dashboard, you can go into the lab tools section, and this is where you're going to find the remote access, the lab find mobile app, and the lab maps. So if we click on lab maps, it's going to show any of the maps that you have already generated. And a couple of examples, for instance, I've got a map that we took a photo of a computer lab and used that as the background image, which works really, really well to be a quick way to make something that looks very impressive. You can have a map that has no background at all. And so it just shows the computer availability. And these could be used internally for your IT teams to see what the traffic patterns are, or they are something that you could potentially surface so that students can see the availability. You can have a diagram that has the layout of that computer lab, and we can show you how to set those up as well. So there's several different ways that you can configure this. If you want to create a new map, you just click on Add New Lab Map. And from here, you just name it. And I'm just going to call this one Demo Lab. And then give it a description. And I'm just going to say, see how easy this can be. And you hit submit. And what that's going to do is create the core of a map. And you have the ability to click on the map itself. And if you have a background that's an image that you want to use as your background, you can click on add new background and then choose a file from your computer and upload that. So that's how you add your background image into LabStats so that you can create that map. Now I have a couple that are already in here. And so I have Projector Lab with Key, and the default size of a map is 800 by 450 pixels, but I know that this map happens to be 1500 by 900. And so I'm going to change that. So 1500 by 900 and apply those changes so that we can see the whole map. Then when you've got your map up, you just need to select what group of computers that you've set up in LabStats that you want to be included on this map. So I'm just going to pull the library group in. Now you can create multiple maps for the group, and this is going to be key when you're looking at potentially social distancing, or if you're making major changes, is you can actually get your new map ready to go while the old one is still published. And then you can just swap those HTML files out in order to update things. So with this one, I'm going to turn on the labels for host name just so I make sure that I place those computers at the right location, and you just drag and drop those computers over. And so here we have station 2, and I'm going to set this one up almost social distanced with every other seat, and you just put those where you want them to be. And so I'm going to configure this one section of the lab. And once you have those where you like them, you can click on the background image again, and you can do things like change the icon size. And so you can increase or decrease those. You can show the operating system if you want to have that flag on there. You can even show offline stations as available. When you are on site, this makes a lot of sense, because if it is that the students or the users turn those computers on as the lab opens up, then any computer that's turned off would be considered available. However, if you're adding in remote access or things like that, that may not be an ideal way to do that. So once you have your lab configured the way that you want it, you just make sure to save it. And then you can go back to the manager, and you can see that that lab is now created, and you can see what it looks like in real time. And so you can, from there, okay, you can download the viewer template, for instance, and I can download that for our new lab. And if I open that up, that's an HTML file that you would be able to publish where you need it to be. So for instance, if you have multiple departments that are LabStats users, but they all have separate instances of LabStats, separate accounts, they would be able to add those HTML files onto the main school website and consolidate the availability in order to flesh out that GPS map that we were referring to earlier. And so if you need to make a change on that map, you just go into that one and hit edit, and that will bring the map back up, and you can again find that group of computers, and you could add in additional computers. And so if you had traffic patterns coming back on campus and more of these computers were needed, you can make them available and just update this map to let students know what's available in real time. Now, you may also have a computer that's no longer available, and you can just delete the station. And when you delete it, it pulls it off of the map and puts it back into the available list of computers in that group. And so once you hit save, without even making any adjustments to that HTML file, I had to refresh it, but those computers are now going to show on that HTML file. So in a matter of, with a couple of very, very minor changes within LabStats, you can very quickly adjust your deployment to show more computers as available for on-site use, or you can move them around and have those changes reflected on the mapping very, very quickly so that students can find exactly what they need. And so that is the core of how to create the maps. I'm going to go back to I'm going to save these changes and go back to the manager. Now, the other option you have, I showed the downloading a viewer template for a single computer lab. You can also download a Carousel Viewer template, which is going to be really nice if you have it on your website or on digital signage or things like that, that if you hold down Control, you can actually select multiple computer labs, and you can have it rotate the image. And I got a little click happy there. So I'm going to set this as a really, really fast rotation of 4 seconds just for illustration purposes. And when you download that template, it will automatically, without any interaction with it, it will automatically cycle through and show what the availability is at each of those locations. And so you can set that template viewer up again for digital signage, for kiosks on campus, or on your website to just cycle through and show exactly what's available in real time. Your students in snowbelt areas such as Idaho would love this feature, because you would be able to verify what the current utilization is in the computer lab before you get out of the car or before you leave home, so that you can head directly to the lab that has resources available. And it will shorten your wait lists, improve the student experience. It will help people know exactly what's available and where. It will reduce the number of hidden gems you have on campus, but will also make sure that you maximize the value of every IT dollar that's spent by helping students find what they need in real time. So that is pretty much the content area. It looks like we've had a couple of questions that have come up in the Q&A, and so we'll address those. And then if there's any other questions, feel free to add those as well.
Tyler, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, we have had a couple questions come through. I'm just going to read these back to you. And once again, to anyone in the viewer audience, if you guys do have questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A module. We've also had a few come through the webinar chat, so I'm going to start with the ones that have come through Q&A. And we have a question from Chris Grantham. And Chris says, so the biggest challenge we have is that we wanted availability to be scrolling through different floors of the library and be up on a TV near the entrance. Icons were so small as to be marginally usable.
Okay. So if you want to increase the icon size, if you go into edit that map, you can actually use this icon scale and adjust that so that they could be larger or smaller. And so that may be part of the solution. If that's not your whole solution, let us know, and we can look at different ways to reconfigure that background image or whatnot in order to make that more usable for the students.
And then we have a question that came through the webinar chat. And this one is from Nancy Larson. And she gives a bit of context here. So I'm going to just read you the entire question here. Nancy says, I have an accessibility question about the maps. A couple years ago, when I published a couple maps, our accessibility group took down the pages with the following comments. It looks like we unpublished this page because there are some accessibility issues with it. Mainly and most importantly, the information about the computers are not in a table element, even though it appears to be and probably should be. This means the current structure would be difficult to someone using assistive technology to access that information. I'm also noticing the alt text in the images only have the operating system, which doesn't really provide the same level of information to someone using a screen reader, i.e. which computers are available, in use, offline, etc. I put a ton of time into the maps only to be squashed by the accessibility team. Can you address their concerns?
Okay. Basically, what I would like to do is give that accessibility information, and if that's something that is, I don't know if they're already working on that or if that's something that they're unaware of and it could be a very quick fix. So I definitely appreciate that feedback, and we will make sure we get our development team up to date on that, and we can reach out to you directly with any updates that are either upcoming or that we're able to make in the short term.
So we have another question in chat. Oh, okay. Sorry. In addition, before we move on, Schofield, we have Josh Schofield. He's in the webinar chat, and he's taken some of these questions and providing answers. So as a follow-up, I will also read what Schofield typed here. He says, "Hey Nancy, sorry to hear you put so much time in the project and had it halted. We actually recently ran through an accessibility audit from an outside agency so we can bring our discoverability features up to the needed levels." And so, and another thing, Nancy, we can follow up with you directly about that. And I think we can pass your information on. And Schofield's aware of it. He's one of our account managers, and we'll make sure that we follow up with you regarding that as well, to make sure that we get what you need and get the complete sense of your feedback and the question you're asking there. I want to move on to a question from, no problem, Nancy. Nancy said that would be awesome. Thank you. So another question in chat from Victor Q. Victor Q asks, any way to make the computers that are being used show icon? That way only the available computers will only be displayed.
At this point, that's not something that would be a functionality. It's designed specifically to show the computers, whether they're available or not. We do have like for the remote access, we have the remote access dashboard that allows you to provide a dynamic list of available computers. And so that's specifically for the purposes of a remote connection. But we do have people that are utilizing the API in order to do things similar to that. Manhattan is a good example. If I bring that one back up, that they are using our API in order to create this almost thermometer style count of available computers. And then from there, they can opt to go in and see the map of which computers are available, not connected to the internet or in use. And so while that's not currently built into the LabStats box as far as creating the maps there, it is something that can be done utilizing our APIs.
So one more item from the webinar chat, and we'll move over to, we've gotten some new questions in the Q&A module. NJ Brand also asked about accessibility. So NJ, we'll be sure to have a member of our team reach back out to you as well, make sure we address that fully. Moving over to the questions that have come through the Q&A module. We have one from J.R. Sears. J.R. asks, can we block some computers from reporting on the map, even though they have the client installed to accommodate this for social distancing, without having it being grayed out and reading offline? Or is it just switching the background, or is just switching the background image the only message? or sorry, only method?
This is one where if you have specific groups of computers that you don't want to be included, you can remove them from the map, as I showed, just by going into the edit, and you just delete that station from the map. And so it just drops back into the available pool of computers that are the list that are involved in that group. So you can select exactly which ones you want to include on the map or not. In the example that I have on the screen, we have the bulk of these computers are not going to show on the map. And then if you want to delete them, you can, or if you want to add them back in, you just move them back onto the image and then save. As far as being able to do it at certain schedules or things like that, that's not something that's built in, but you can choose exactly which computers you want to be included when you generate the map. If that didn't answer your question, give us some more information and we can make sure we dive a little deeper onto it.
So we have, so I'm going to take these a little bit out of order. We had one come in from Chris Grantham. Again, he asked, we had a concern that the default colors were an issue because of individual color blindness. Is that being looked at as an accessibility issue?
Yeah, we're going to be addressing that as part of our accessibility upgrades, and as we're looking at things, that is something that is being considered, but we will need to make sure we get any updates from our development team and get back in contact with you.
And if I understand that one correctly, Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're referring to the colors on the map here. You'll notice that in addition to the blue for in use, the green for available, the gray for offline, there's also triangles, squares, and circles there. So there's a shape indicator in addition to color. I know that is something that was implemented as a way for folks with color recognition
that is the default shape. We also have just a square or circle shape that, but the default does give the shape indicator as well as the color, which is one of the efforts we've made as far as accessibility. But again, we're always upgrading and updating that. So hopefully there's good news that we can add down the road.
So we have, let me go back to my Q&A here. So this is not a question, it's so much a comment. Cheryl Tarbox offered a refresh HTML tag that addresses something that Chris Grantham was describing. And so we'll be sure to follow up with that with Cheryl and Chris and make sure that we facilitate that conversation. We can email you guys about that. We have an anonymous attendee, who asks, what is the timeline for these accessibility features being available? And Schofield answered that when he said, great question, work in progress. I'm happy to keep everyone posted. It is of great importance to us as well. And I would also offer on top of that, specific features, we'll have to circle back with the guys doing the building and doing the work. But accessibility features is a big thing. That's a big idea, as you might imagine. But in regards to specific features, that might be an easier conversation to have. So if you have any questions about that, email Schofield, and we'll be able to have that conversation with you guys specifically. Let's see. Have I missed any questions here in the Q&A?
And while Brett's reviewing those questions, we have over the last year gone through and with a specific eye towards the accessibility issues. And so some of those we are definitely aware of and they're in progress of improving. And some of them we definitely want to know about so that we can make sure that we include those as part of our updates and upgrades. So we appreciate that feedback.
So we did have a question. Let's see, about two questions. One, Ted Lowe asked, is it possible to send us this demo to watch it again? Yes, Ted. Sorry, Tyler, I'm going to go ahead and answer this one. we record all of these, and then we have a member of our team who cleans it up a little bit, edits it, and then we send that back out. Usually takes a day or two to send out that recording. And then there was another person, Rick Baker, asked about transcription. And I'll just read this back for the entire viewer audience. Live transcription is a feature that Zoom has. We do not have it enabled for this webinar. We will look into it for future webinars. However, when it comes to the recording that we'll send out, we will look to see if we can't have transcription included in that recording that we send out. So I hope that addresses your question, Rick. Looks like we had a few more come through chat, Tyler. Let me read these to you. NJ Brand asks, on this mapping, is there a way to also indicate which computers have specific software?
That is also one that is feedback that's been given to our development team. And so it's something that we've heard loud and clear. At this point, the way that our customers are handling that is similar to the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, where they have added that onto their background image. So I'm bringing that back up on the screen where they are indicating where like the Rhino 5 software is located. If we go to a different computer lab, they've got it indicated with just an icon next to those computers. And so if there are key software packages that you need to identify which computers those are located on, you can do it as part of your background image. Our long-term plan is to hopefully have it so that you can surface that as part of the map, but we don't have a delivery date on that. So in the short term, add it onto your background image, and in the long term, we've heard that feedback loud and clear, and we are looking at what options we have.
And then let's see. Just a shout out to Victor Q, who in the webinar chat shared an example of a JavaScript version of the maps he created using the LabStats API. Very cool. Let me hop back over to Q&A and see if I missed something. Here's a question from Cheryl Tarbox. Looks like Schofield typed an answer, but we'll let you, I'm going to read this one back to you as well, Tyler. Cheryl asks, will links to the LabMaps be available through the LabFind app soon? I'll read Schofield's answer too before you hop into that one. Schofield answers, we are very interested in making this happen, and it is on the roadmap. ETA development speak is a foreign language to me. A few of us are being squeaky wheels about this for you, Cheryl.
And I will second that response that, yeah, we're being the squeaky wheel, and we will definitely let you know if, when we have any updates or more definitive information.
Let's see. Okay. Here is a question that just came in from Daniel Chin in the webinar chat. He asks, is there any calendar or scheduling feature to show on the maps to show which class or event may be in session at a certain time or live time? If not on maps, maybe somewhere else to show that.
So that is where, like I showed the example of Mount Royal. Let me see if I can bring them back up. Under their computer availability, they have the link to the schedule that they put next to the link to the map. And so that's one of the ways that people have handled it, is they have a separate link to the schedule and the map. Others are putting the links to the schedule, over where the map is displayed. And so right now it would be a separate component of wherever you publish this map, you would have the schedule listed in conjunction with it. But that is also something that is feedback that has gone on to our development group. And as we get any updates on options where, being able to turn a map on or off based on classroom time or things like that, those are all feedback that have been given, and hopefully we will have information on those being a potential release as an additional feature down the road. But right now, the way that people are handling that is they are publishing the schedules next to the map so that people can verify that it's in open lab time or what that schedule is right next to where they look at the current availability on the map.
Okay, so I am not seeing any new questions coming through chat and Q&A. Oh, here's one just now from Robin Chase. Robin asks, oh, sorry, this one's actually a few minutes old, and it looks like Schofield has answered this. So I'm going to read this one back and read Schofield's answer, and then Tyler, if you have anything to add. So Robin asked, would I be able to upload my own icon designs to use instead of the defaults? And Schofield answered, this is not something available now. I'm happy to add this as a feature request.
That's a pretty complete answer as far as, yeah, that is a great feature request, and we will send that on.
Okay, I'm going to take one more look. Here's one from Robert. Robert, I apologize. I'm going to butcher your last name. Robert Kulo. I'm sorry, Robert. You are Robert. Robert asks, editing large maps is currently a pain to do if the maps are long and wide, like one that is for a large digital sign. We currently have to scroll all the way down to then scroll left and right. Any thoughts on updating the map editor?
Okay, that is something like when I was doing the demonstration, what he's referring to is, for instance, this map is 1500 by 900, which doesn't fit easily on the screen. And so you have to scroll down to the bottom in order to grab the scroll bar and be able to come to the side. And so that is not always the most convenient way to go. So that's another one that we will add in on the feature request, because I can definitely see how, especially as the size of the maps increase, that would be more and more of a hassle to do. So right now we do have the scroll, and then it gives you the slide bar option, but we'll definitely send that feedback in and see if that's something that can be quickly and easily updated. So thank you for that feedback.
I don't see any other active questions. We'll keep it open for a few minutes. And then we've had a number of folks, you can check the webinar chat, share examples of maps or things they've created with the LabStats API in the webinar chat. And also, I'll just take this opportunity to say that we are going to share some links in the Zoom webinar chat for the audience, and these links will take you to calendars of members of our team. We'll have a link for if you're a current LabStats customer and have some questions or would like to follow up, there's the links right now. There is another link if you are a non-customer inside of the US, another link if you are a non-customer outside of the US, and then we've also included a link to our LabMaps page, which gives you a little bit more information about LabMaps.
Okay. I did happen to see in the Q&A, Robert asked another question of, is there a way to delete a background that's no longer needed? And so I just really quickly poked in. If you go to the admin section under advanced, you can see the image manager. And if you click on the image manager, it will give you a list of all of the map backgrounds that you have uploaded into LabStats, and you can go in and view or delete any of those from that admin tab. Thank you all for attending. Hopefully the information was helpful. If you have any other questions, we would be happy to jump on a one-on-one demo or screen share so that we can look at your specific maps and scenarios, and also discuss any special use cases that you've come up with, and see if we can help with that solution as well. So thank you very much for joining, and do not be shy about reaching out if you have any additional questions.